four very interesting individuals, influencers, millennials, a very key demographic, I think, for a lot of content creators, content providers, content owners, and event organizers and brands. I think what was just said in terms of connecting with your fans, this is a good opportunity to hear from them. So I'd just like to take the time to introduce. We have Tara Hirebet, from the head of APAC for Contagious Consulting. Contagious helps brands and agencies with trend tracking, innovation workshops, and creative strategy. Tara has spent the last 10 years in advertising, market research, trends, foresight, and innovation, working with the likes of Ogilvy, TBWA, and Chinese youth consultancy, China Youthology. Before she joined Contagious, Tara established Trend Watching's APAC office and served as a consultant on WPP's The Futures Company. So, Tara, one thing you could share with the audience that people may not know about you.
I'm a real geek, but I also collect children's books.
We do this in our office. I work with a whole pile of 24 to 28-year-old millennials, and it is all about a conversation and sharing. This is what happens now. I'd like to turn it to Singapore-based sports journalist Cheryl Tay. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining. Cheryl is known as one of the first female motoring journalists in Singapore. 7 years experience in this space. She's contributed to a variety of prominent publications, including the Straits Times and Yahoo. She works with F1 promoter Singapore GP to give talks to secondary schools. And she not only shoots and writes about motorsports, she drives and has actually participated in international test drives, right? Now, one thing we need to know about you.
I nearly got my flying license before my driving license because I was in a youth flying club then, so I flew a tiny plane solo and then, but...
Okay, so flying is your first passion?
It
or
was.
Driving?
It was.
It was. Endurance athlete and blogger Azlan Ithin is to our, yes, there we are. Aslan's passions, he actually operates a blog called Azlan Runs, where he frequently posts on his passion points of trail ultra running. What is trail ultra running?
Basically, not running on the road.
Okay. Sports technology, photography, and web tech, while working with other sports bloggers and companies to promote the local sporting community. One thing that people need to know about you, Azlan.
Okay, this answer is going to be different from what we discussed. I'm afraid of heights.
Okay.
That's all.
So you don't fly a lot?
I do.
Okay.
I just can't look down from a building and not be scared.
Okay, all right, take note. Social media influencer and blogger Isaac Liu. Thank you very much for joining us. Isaac is a triathlete, adventure racer, runner, tech geek, and motivator. He's a known blogger who has written reviews and articles covering swimming, running, and cycling, largely major local sporting events in terms of coverage, right? He has worked with a number of major brands, everyone from Mizuno. I got it right, yeah?
Yes, you got it right.
I didn't in rehearsal. Salomon, Nike, New Balance, Oakley, and Puma. One thing to know about you.
Okay, I know you guys want me to say this, but...
Say it. Come on, admit it.
I don't have a Facebook account.
Ooh, okay. On that, some data points courtesy Global Web Index's Generations report from earlier this year. The definition of millennials. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know this. It's typically framed up as being a group between the ages of 16 and 30 years old, sometimes stretches up to 35, depending on the research agency. Globally, there are close to 750 million millennials online, or 49% of the worldwide internet user base. Compare that to baby boomers, and there's a few of those in here, who form just 1/10 of the total online population in 2013. In APAC, there's close to 500 million of these millennials that have internet access. In Malaysia, 65% of internet users are millennials. Compare that to boomers, who just basically make up 2%. Buying power. One report estimates that their global buying power is around 2.4 trillion US dollars, with Asian millennials currently accounting for roughly 900 billion US dollars, basically the equivalent of combined GDP of Indonesia and Philippines. By 2020, 60% of the world's millennials will reside in Asia. So pretty significant here. Now, just on some traits of millennials. So 83% of Asian millennials own a smartphone, compared to 76% of millennials worldwide. They strongly believe that they are on the cutting edge of technology. 80% use 2 or more devices simultaneously while watching TV. They're typically entrepreneurial, often much more so than previous generations. In Asia, the dominant life attitude for millennials is to enjoy simple things in life. Family and friends often hold greater weight over status symbols. And when it comes to sports, an MTV survey earlier this year suggested that the World Cup would outrank Summer or Winter Olympics. And they are a discerning, critical, connected, and engaged lot, an incredibly important demographic for brands. So I'm going to put this back to you. Is this a correct assessment, Azlan?
Well, you're mostly correct, especially when it comes to the buying power, I think. How much was it? How many billion was it?
Close to basically 700, what is it, 900 billion or
900 billion. I think the reason is because most of us millennials, we are those that are coming off to the workforce. We all have money to spend. We've all been working for some time. And aside from family or maybe having a relationship, we have money to spend. And most of us come from maybe from a sporting background. So we are willing to spend if we are deeply passionate about what we want. So it can be weekend sports, so say soccer, or it can be running. We are willing to spend if we feel that the brand is good for us. And the thing to note is that we are not just restricted to what you can offer here. If a particular brand, you can't find it in Singapore, fine, we'll ship it overseas. So I think that's the challenge now with having brands in Singapore. Like exclusivity can be a key role. If we find that something is seriously exclusive overseas and we think, hey, why not have it in Singapore, we'll probably just get it overseas, why not? We are willing to take that step because I guess we have the funds for it. Most of us are working. So yeah, that's just my take.
Yep, that's right. For exclusivity, we just go online, we just get it on the brand's store web page, and then we just find stuff that we want, we just bring it, ship it in.
Tara, how are millennials changing? I mean, you do a lot of trend watching, trend tracking. How are millennials changing the way content is being consumed, or at least the expectations?
Well, I think one of the biggest differences is just that when you start to look at this idea of millennials, they're kind of digital natives. So it means that it's not like they're learning the internet. It's like from day one, from birth, they're kind of on it. So I think, neurologists are actually noticing that the way the neurology of youth are changing is completely different. So, for example, they're more impatient because everything's delivered on a mobile phone instantaneously. So that means attention span is shorter. So by default, when you're looking at sports content or anything like that, you're looking at people who are going to be across devices, first of all. Their attention's going to be divided across that. And it means that they want to squeeze in sort of whatever they're doing into any spare minute. So you're looking at smaller snack-sized content and lots of it. And that also will affect the way that you look at maybe like a storytelling journey, right? Like they're not linear. So if you've got somebody plopping in between different devices all the time, how do you let them get in and out of your content all the time and still get the same kind of experience? I mean, I think there's a stat from Time Inc. and Interscope that said that like a youth on average switches between media platforms 27 times in 1 hour. So how are you going to get across what you need to say with that sort of level of, I guess, fragmentation?
So Cheryl, we talked about this a couple nights ago about your social media addiction. Can you share a little bit more about that?
About social media?
Remember your social media addiction? Remember we were going to get counseling for you? No, I'm kidding. Could you talk about some of your preferences when it comes to content consumption? Do you actually watch TV?
Okay, I kind of sit on both sides of the fence because as a photojournalist, I produce content. So I have to go to events, I take photos, I'm pressured to put it quicker than the wires, I have to get my news out. At the same time, I'm also a sports fan. So I also like to watch, keep up with sports events, everything. TV, the only time I watch TV is when I watch Formula One. That's because, unless I'm overseas, I get it on live stream, but then live stream will cost money. So, and not just, when I have the TV on, I also have like my tablet with an app, like to see, special pit lane cameras or extra data and all that. And then I also have Twitter to see what the teams, they are throwing out updates or other news that we don't get. So these are just some of the ways that I consume content these days. What
do you expect will happen in terms of, how should content owners, broadcasters and such address this going forward? Is it, again, and are they actually doing it the right way right now?
I guess we still have to cover both the traditional and the social ways of presenting content, because I mean the younger generation, we're always on our phones, we have data, we have wireless, we want things fast, but there's still the other segments of the audience who don't mind, who can spend the time sitting in front of the TV, or they don't mind flipping the papers the next day. So I guess there needs to be more, besides just TV broadcast, I feel that there should also be live stream is possible. I understand that there's a lot of cost that goes behind it, infrastructure, whether the place you're at has the right satellites and all that. And at the same time, your social media, whether it's updates on a news site like Yahoo or your own website, on top of Twitter updates, people want pictures, so Instagram might help. Facebook as well. So all these are very demanding, and I feel that nowadays people want things now. And I don't need the full story. I don't need to know how, what happened in his car, why did he crash, or I can read that later. Right. And that's another form of pressure where your headlines, your bite-sized news needs to be interesting enough for people to want to click into the link and read the story. There was a comment yesterday made about millennials, or at least the younger generation, only concerned about goals. Isaac, is that true? That it's really, again, just short snippets and only about goals, only about the happening highlights?
Yes, for me, actually, for when I follow on Ironman, which is coming in October, Ironman World Championships, what I do was that I'll turn on my Twitter, I'll turn on the live streaming on my big screen TV, I'll follow on my laptop with the Twitter feeds, and I'll be following up on the video itself. So actually updates, they give updates on Ironman.com. They give all the live updates on who's the winner, who's the first place, who's the second place, and all. So it's actually very important, we get bite-sized information up to date.
Now, when it comes to brands, because you work, again, with quite a number of brands, how do you think what is needed to really to address the expectations of millennials from a brand's point of view?
With all the brands that I've worked with, I guess most of them, they actually wanted authenticity on their products. If they give me a product for a review or something like that, I've done countless of shoes reviews. What they want to see is that actually how I'm connecting with the people and engaging my readers and so on and so forth. So I think it's actually more important to get authenticity from them, from us, actually, in fact, from us to our readers.
We hear a lot about brands becoming publishers, moving into that space. We've heard, again, over the last couple of days from even Samsung talking about their investments across sports, or at least they're focusing on sports. Tara, what are brands really capable of moving into the space? Are they best positioned to move? And how should they be looking at this as content marketers?
Well, I think definitely, there's a huge propensity for brands to be into that space. And I think the main thing that I think one of the things to remember as well is exactly what we've been talking about, this multi-platform sort of an aspect. I think what's changing is the fact that, I think sports and music are quite special because we assume that they're really interactive, because by default, you're in a great situation where there are people next to you, you're watching a game, there's that atmosphere and everything else. But when you're looking at a youth and a millennial, they're on their screen at the same time. So you need to think about the fact that they're always on multiple devices and they're always switched on. So what can that content being delivered through them do? So an example that I think is really good is if you start looking at iBeacon technology. So you've got the baseball league in America that's actually got an app, and they've understood that what people hate about going to sports stadiums is just the crowds, about trying to get their food, all this sort of stuff. So when you get in there, the iBeacon technology enables you to sit in your seat and actually order food. It enables you to get pitch scores. It enables you to get live feeds and videos. And so you're getting an immersive extra layer on top of being at that event. So I think that's something that brands have to look at, and technology is a great space to sort of bridge that gap.
But are millennials really wanting this type of technology?
Yep,
Do you want to have that always-on, always-connected sort of approach?
Always.
Wearables, is that going to translate over too well?
Yep, I guess the new Apple iWatch, the Apple Watch, the Samsung Android Wear, all this is going to be the next game player for all the millennials. I guess, people can just swipe on their watch and see what's going to go on instead of just going on their tablets. I think really, even mobile, I'm talking about being mobile, this is going to make even the future.
Azlan, as a sports enthusiast, but also someone who's participatory, how do you see the connection between technology and sports?
I think it depends on how you look at it. I think technology in sports is very broad. How I look at it from, say, a running perspective is that with all these wearables coming up, you have to ask yourself how much of the value of the people who buy it are willing to invest in it. I see a problem with wearable technology is that people often get caught up with the hype and they don't exactly know how to use it. And then at some point, say 6 months down the road, they have the watch and they discard it because they have no idea how to process all this data. I get it a lot of times. All my friends come to me, they ask me how am I supposed to use this, and 6 months or 3 months later, they tell me, are you using it? Nope.
No, they're not.
Nope.
They're not going to use
it. Goes quiet. It suddenly goes quiet. So I think this technology will really depend on what the market is or how you use it. So it really depends. For example, Isaac and myself. Isaac's a triathlete, so I'm sure he has a watch.
Yep.
Right. So I have a watch myself. This is a pretty expensive watch. This is a Garmin Phoenix 2. So I use it for my runs. So I think it really depends on your target market and your segment. I'm sure Samsung, you have your own apps, and so do other smartphone providers. So the technology is rapidly changing, but the only problem I see is that people who are not really technically inclined may buy into the hype, but they eventually will die off, and another group will come on.
So I think that's the thing where Samsung or whoever they are targeting, like millennial groups, they actually should create more user-friendly apps or user-friendly wearables, I don't know, for them to use instead.
Yeah.
And just we buy one and then we put it aside, and like 3 months later on, confused on how to use it.
I want to turn it back to the publisher and broadcaster space again. How do you actually access your information relating to sports? Isaac?
For me, I'm always on Twitter. You can get me on Twitter, Isaac976. Actually, that's how I also put on to my followers, where I update them on all the running events coming up on my blogs as well. It's just it's like a short link to my Twitter.
But are you doing any TV? Are you watching it on TV?
On TV? Actually, I seldom I'm on TV, actually.
Nobody watches TV anymore.
Ooh.
Okay, to be honest, as a millennial, to be honest,
Fox crew still here.
Okay, to be honest, as a millennial, I've not watched TV since 2010. Ever since I started running and Twitter and everything came up, the only 2 TV screens are the ones that are in my room, my 2 dual monitors.
So I'm sports, right?
Yeah, even if I'm not watching sports, I'm watching something else. Everything is on either Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or on the website. So I think websites still play an important role, but to a degree, it works primarily in like the US and Europe, but not much in Asia because we are bite-sized. We love to digest bite-sized stuff.
Right.
I think traditional media is actually slowing down. I don't know, but when I post on, it's for any upcoming runs that you guys want to look for, do you actually go look for, how do you guys get it? I don't know, if you guys go to the stores to find out, like the running store to say, oh, upcoming event, they don't do that anymore. So I see when I post on an event on my blog site, and I just see those links getting click, 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 click.
Tara, when you hear this, what does that suggest to you in terms of the future of broadcasting, content, distribution, et cetera? Because we heard a lot over, yesterday. We were having this discussion that it seemed to be very much about what I have, the assets I have, the way I distribute it, what format it's in, the type of content, et cetera. I didn't hear a lot of audience discussion until probably about an hour ago. What's your feeling on this? Do you think these broadcasters, or I'd say other distribution, content owners and distribution partners, et cetera, actually understand or listen to the audience well?
I think that's basically what's happening is that, we're in a time where things are changing really fast. So being adaptive is really important. So I don't think these things are irrelevant. I just think that the models have to become a lot less sort of hierarchical, and they have to be a little bit like kind of, if you think of war rooms and, command centers and things like that. And I think marketing has to change to catch up with that. So if you look at the World Cup, for example, you had Tencent kind of going in there, and they actually put out an article, and I think Campaign really covered it well. And it talked about the fact that they actually set up a real-time marketing team. And what these guys did is they had a 180-second turnover to find out whatever was happening in the World Cup and produce some kind of content out of it. And they did. And it was posted across, and it was one of the most successful sort of ways to use the World Cup. And then you had Sony, which had like 32, I think, they were tracking like 32 different channels, and they had 6 different languages. And they basically did one stadium live, which was they were looking at across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram during the World Cup, aggregating the conversations together into themes, and then applying that out so people could actually follow thematic conversations. And that's a very different way of like deploying your marketing. It doesn't mean you don't do it the same way. I mean, don't do marketing. It just means you've got to be a lot more adaptive so that it works with social media and the speed of the way people are thinking. And I also think the other part to look at is, I think like another space to really check out is this idea of immersive experiences. And I think what was really interesting is how we talked about this idea that not everybody gets to go to Manchester United and sit on the field and, kind of sit in that stadium. And it's true, like if you're living in Asia, it's far away, it's expensive, there are lots of geographical barriers. So again, you look at Google's acquisition of Oculus Rift. You've got O2 and I think O2 and I think it was Arsenal or something like in England, that they basically tied up and they did national training programs. So if I put on my Oculus Rift, I feel like I'm training with the national team. That's, again, it's adding a level of experience that's amazing for a fan. You don't have to be there to do that. So all these kind of pieces of technology enable you to sit in your living room, which we do more and more, and still have that kind of engaged experience and passion for sport and, use it.
We didn't hear a lot about esports over the last couple of days too either. That's obviously an evolving space as well. I assume some of you are game players, video game players? No? You have devices, console devices?
Used to be.
Yeah. But I do want to go back to being an influencer and what that means. So Cheryl, maybe you could share some of your experiences. What does it mean to be an influencer? And how do you actually become an influencer?
I guess nowadays people are moving away from the whole traditional celebrity endorsement type of things. I mean, it's still around, but I think what's gaining traction is actually using, they call them community bloggers or online influencers. I think the keywords for them are accessibility, accessible, authentic, trust, and community reach. So, I mean, these are people that can be, the guy in the cubicle next to you, he's just a regular office guy, but he has a huge passion for, say, mixed martial arts, and he watches everything online, he goes home and he writes everything up, and things like that. And he starts to get a following because people know he's not biased, he's not being paid to write what he's supposed to write, and he gives honest opinions. And it's accessible because you can just drop him an email, a direct Facebook message. You don't have to go through like an agent or an agency or a company, to get to that. Usually all these celebrities are very far out. Like I don't know if I can ever, if my letter really reaches Jennifer Lopez or it goes to her marketing guy, that goes to the PR guy, that goes to the comms guy, things like that. And there's also the trust, like many people buy things based on blog recommendations, like so-and-so said this is good for a kid, so I'm going to buy it, blah, blah, blah. And then back to community, because of, that reach you have, you get him to write something and then it reaches out to, say, 20,000 people, and because it's online, they share, and it goes, and it goes, and it goes. So that's
how do you interact with your community? Or who is your community, actually? Let's start there.
Well, I started in the car and motorsports industry first, so doing motoring journalism and all that. So they are mostly the 50-50 male-female car fans, love extreme sports. And then after I took up a deeper role in photography, I started getting more people who appreciate good photos and things like that. So the key about keeping them engaged is you have to come up with content that is different. Like, okay, maybe if I talk about this race, half the world has already talked about Hamilton crashing, for example. But how can you do? Maybe you can get them to respond, get them to interact. Like, what do you think? Was it controversial? Do you think Nico Rosberg intentionally stopped by the side, or was it? And then maybe do some kind of giveaway or a poll and give them a voice. Like okay, I can say something about it. Whereas the rest of the news is just nah. This is what happened. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Azlan, when you look at your following again, your audience, how do you interact with them? We talked about you've been approached by a few people on the street here, and they're going, how do you react to that?
Okay, that's interesting because one is you feel good. Some random person says, "Hey, I know you. I thought you read my blog." Oh, yeah, I did. Okay, that's interesting. But I think because the community or the sport I represent is still very niche, it's still a growing sport. So ultra running has only been in Asia for a while. So I think how I built that up is I started racing last year. I went to Malaysia. I raced for 3 days in the jungle. So through that, I met a lot of wonderful people. They became my good friends, my family. So I think after that, I started building this blog. The blog became like a central pivot. If you want to find out anything about trail running in Singapore, you can kind of have a look. And eventually, that community, because it's small, it becomes mutual, and somebody who wants to be interested, then we'll pull them along. I think this is not we have no bad intentions or anything. We just go with the flow. Everyone's communal. Everything is very pure in that sense, because the sport doesn't have much corporate sponsorship. And everything has to do with either direct branding from the company down. And for people like myself, we don't really represent a brand, but we represent an idea, and the brands will come.
Right.
So that's how, I mean, it keeps it authentic in a way.
Why do you think millennials actually resonate more with or can react, or I say relate more to, say, this new generation of content creators, bloggers, influencers? There was a study, I think there was a report about a month ago or so, of the top celebrities today, 5 of those out of the top 10 were actually YouTube content creators, like the likes of Ryan Higa, PewDiePie, and such. Why do you think these individuals are getting such attention? And, you know, that of the millennials generation, why are they so important now? Go for it, Isaac.
I guess it's all about intensity. So you see, they're coming out as themselves and not being like behind a PR people agency or a manager or something like that. So like when Ryan Higa posts a YouTube post, like it'll be himself. He's just talking to his audiences and all. So I think that's what actually the millennial wants. So it's all about intensity, and everything that people want to see is more on, you know, like new, fresh ideas rather than just coming up from the media agencies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, again, the brands fit into this, right? Because they're obviously trying to figure this out of how to connect with, or at least have a part in that conversation. What do you recommend? Like, where do you bring a brand into that conversation? To connect with your influentials? Like, you work with brands, you get sponsored to as well. Where do they fit?
I think, you know, everyone's talking about online marketing and social media. It's apparently lower cost than traditional media and all that. But then I think that's, I mean, everyone nowadays, instead of giving their website URL, they give their Facebook page. You know, so that's and then they use like Facebook ads and stuff like that to get the stuff out. So social media, I feel it's a must. It's already a necessity now. It's no longer like, okay, I have Facebook, so come follow my stuff if you can. But now it's the way that people are using it to reach out. But I still feel they need to have some form of interaction, because, you know, everything goes just online. There's still that, you know, there's no personal touch to it. Mm-hmm. So a combination of both social media reach as well as having some kind of interaction with the fans, getting them to experience the brand for themselves, rather than just having half the world talking about it. You know, end of the day, I still want to know if this works for me, if this suits me, and that I feel is a challenge, because everything is just online nowadays, and that's what I feel.
Do you think brands are doing enough to really understand the millennial generation? Tara, what do you think?
I think the brands are doing a lot. I think people are doing a lot of market research and, you know, trying to really understand the demographics and everything else. I think that what's a bit harder is the fact that if people are really kind of using everything in their sort of at their disposal to kind of, you know, interact with them. I think one of the biggest things is, everything's changing very quickly. So, you know, we're already starting to talk about GoPro and user-generated content and how that's really changed the way sports is being sort of absorbed. But, you know, we're already getting to places where you've got like haptic T-shirts, and you've got like, I know there was a thing, I think it was like a year ago, like it's called Butt Kicker or something. So basically, you know, like I can stick the technology on an F1 car, I can stick it on a hockey player, and when he smashes into a screen, and I have that thing under my seat, I can feel the smash on me, you know? So we're looking, like technology is moving much, much faster than I think brands are actually able to absorb them and put them into their sort of marketing machine. And so I think that's what has to sort of change. And that's what I mean by kind of this command center or like adaptive war rooms or whatever else it is. I think it's just the fact that we have to be a lot looser with the way that we incorporate these kind of things and experiment and prototype with this stuff a lot more.
Sure, but also you're talking command centers and war rooms and such. Adidas has done them. Philips just built one and launched it last week to study their consumers and then, you know, be able to somehow use content as a means of connecting with audiences and particular stakeholders. But isn't that a security issue too as well? Doesn't that raise the issue of concerns around security? How important is privacy to the millennials generation here? You got 3, 4 viewpoints here. Maybe start with Isaac. What's your viewpoints on privacy?
That's why I don't have a Facebook account.
No, but seriously.
Okay, maybe I can contribute a bit. Okay, as for myself, I had this thought to create a Facebook. You know, Facebook has two two types. One is the profile, and one is your, say, an athlete page, right? There's two types. So I think for us as influencers, sometimes we have to lead a bit of a dual life. We want the public to kind of see what we are doing, like say promote a brand, promote a sport, or promote whatever content we're producing. But that's the thing, this is on our own profiles. So sometimes you have to ask ourselves, what are we posting out there? So for me, I don't really post a lot of my personal stuff anymore. But even if I do, it'll be on like the friends column, and that's a challenge. But I myself personally, as a Facebook user, I don't really post any personal stuff anymore. Huh. Somehow rather, my name becomes my brand as the influencer. Right. It's no longer like a brand. So I guess that's how, in relation back to your first point, it's more of an authenticity, that you yourself, you are the person, you represent, say, your sport, whatever brand that you carry, and then people can relate to you because you are the real deal. You're not somebody who, is just out there to promote. Yeah. But that privacy issue, if you're obviously online presenting yourself as an authentic individual and such, I'm sure you would put up a few highlights of who you are or information that are a bit more personal, correct? I mean, Cheryl, how do you present, what kind of persona are you creating online for yourself or hoping to create?
I guess it really depends on what market you want to reach and how you want to present yourself. Like, for example, there are some bloggers who they type in Singlish, they have, they're just free their language and all. But then, like for me, because I'm a journalist and also I give talks to school kids and all that, I have to be very careful with the kind of pictures I put. Like, if I take pictures of, say, race queens, I got to be careful about not putting too much out there. If the kid takes it and shows his mom, I'll get in trouble. And the language I use, I've had moms telling me like, hey, I want my son to improve his English, so I got him to take a look at your blog and things like that. But the more you put out there, it also means, the less privacy you have. Even though you might not be talking about your own personal life, like you may not talk about what I ate or where I went, but it's just about telling people, there are people who meet you and they go like, oh, weren't you at that event that day? They know like everywhere like where you are. So it's something that it's a trade-off. If you want that influence, you want that profile, then you just have to be prepared that you can't exactly keep everything private. Of course, the personal details, some people choose to talk about all their relationships and whatever problems they have. It's really up to you. You still have that control over what you want to put out. But just be careful of the circumstances. Even back to brands, the more you want to share out there, everyone, online media, social media is giving people a voice. They can just say whatever they want to say, create a blog for free on Blogspot, WordPress, and they just put something viral and they become famous. So it's a danger, but at the same time, it will also work if you use it correctly.
Cool. Can I get a show of hands of those who are representing brands here in the audience? Please put up your hands. Come on, don't be shy. We got one over there. Where are you? I'm going to have to see. I can't see with the light. Sorry. Raise it again. Good, I'm coming after you. We're going to do something different. We're actually going to pull you into the actual conversation. This is something that we do locally at an event called Content Conversations. So, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sheena from QNet.
Hi, Sheena. I'm going to ask you a few questions. How important are millennials to your activities?
Very important. They're probably our main demographic.
And how are you actually addressing this cohort? Like, what type of things are you doing to understand them better?
I think, first of all, trying to get as much feedback as we can. So having a little bit of while before it was very much one-directional, it's a bi-directional conversation that we're actually trying to have with them. And I think our entire communications and marketing materials have moved into a content management area. So it's all about quality content, engagement, and getting really high-level stuff out there, bite-sized, as they said. You see it in some of the new instruments, apps that are out there, like Vine, or it's a 7-second video. And that's exactly as long as that attention span lasts. So you got to be on top of your game.
Any other advice you would offer to maybe publishers, broadcasters, brands, etc., stakeholders?
I think the most important thing is to stay on top of what's happening out there, be innovative and be disruptive. Don't always just follow, but sometimes also do something new yourself and give it a shot, risk, and see what happens.
Do you have any questions for the group up there? Anything that comes to mind? Don't worry if you don't. Okay, come back. Who else had their hand up? Don't be shy. Come on. please put your hand up. Now, who's from a broadcaster here? Where's the Fox crew? Or I'm just going to jump on you. What are your thoughts around the whole millennials group? You are a millennial, right? No. What? Oh, sorry. Hey, I'm. Maybe that's a compliment. Maybe you could introduce yourself and give a little bit of sort of a spin on this and your take.
Yeah, I'm Delphi from China. So everybody should know it's an isolated internet environment compared to the world. So I personally running a social media account in China. I'm facing lots of problem because I majorly introduce what's happening in the sports market in the world to Chinese. But it's hard to create contents because the most important thing is when I'm introducing, I'm find that the people when I translate the articles very deep. Very analysis, so they didn't very interesting to read it. So people are trying to get information from social media from China. I'm not sure about the word, but from China, they're just trying to get some information, very basic things. So I want to ask people there, like any solutions, like can interact them, like trying to get interesting with some like knowledge things, like analysis, because this can really help the sports marketing people in China to know more how to do it.
Right. So what you're suggesting, if there's more analysis or more data points or information?
But how to make them interesting to read it.
Right. So present it. So that's a good point. How do you actually engage, or how should organizations, in terms of the presentation of the content, what format, what structure, what works for the millennial generation? Visual over, say, straight sort of text? What do you typically are interested as individuals?
I think videos now are pretty hot, like what she mentioned, Vimeo. Vine. That was Vine, right? Yeah. Vines was pretty short. I think this should capture the attention span of all the kids these days. YouTube is one of the strongest content creators now for even like Red Bull. Red Bull has their own channel where they actually features all their extreme athletes. This should actually cater to all the people that I know that's actually online, like us.
David, how's Perform doing all this? What Perform is obviously. I'll let you explain. Come on.
Okay.
Don't be shy, guys.
Well, we produce different form of content, whether it's video, news, data. Obviously, we're trying to understand from our client perspective how to package the content so it fits the expectation of the audience, and particularly the millennials. We have strong ambitions in trying to turn data, particularly, into right format, like live infographics, widgets, live facts that are, as it's been said before, nuggets, bite of content that are easily digestible, that are original, and that change the way the fans consume the sports, whether pre-match, post-match, or live. And I, particularly coming from the Opta data side of things, believe that there's a very interesting perspective in Asia to do around this. And as the panelists said, they are all wearing device, they have a phone, so they're pretty much used, I think, from an outside point of view, to be tracked and measured. They know everything about themselves, and to a certain extent, we believe that they might expect the same from the sports they consume. They've been following football and all their passion so deeply, they write about it on a day-to-day basis, so they expect from the publishers and the brand to offer them an extra layer of information, but in the right way. So that's the challenge, is to how to take raw content and package it, present it in the right format so it fits not only the expectation, but the moment they consume it.
Thanks very much. Just how much time do we have left, Tara? Okay, one last question. We heard a lot of comment about localized content, and everybody was talking about, we got to do more local content. guys, what's your feeling about that? How important is local content? We get a lot of the stuff that comes in from other markets and global, but do you think there really needs to be more focus on local properties and local initiatives? You're all very, not so much, I would say, aside from F1 and maybe what other international sports, football, what else is there?
One UFC.
But do you think there should be more of a localized focus of organizations and brands? How important is local to you guys? Go for it, Isaac. Or Azlan?
Just thinking.
Well, I think it's still important, I think, because that's what draws the market. So, for example, like running, I think, like, for example, I don't really partake in local runs anymore, but I think they are still quite important. Okay, because of the nature of my sport, so I usually travel overseas to run and to compete. But I think the local scene of running should still be there because it's important, especially to get to promote the sport. Obviously, you have to start from local up. So, for example, like Stand Chart Marathon Singapore, everyone looks forward to it because they know at the end of the year there'll be that year-end marathon. So I think, I don't know, it should still be kept that way.
So on that, what would we give back to the group here in terms of recommendations? Whether it's be content owners, technology producers, device owners, manufacturers, through to broadcasters and brands. What would your last sort of recommendations be? And we'll just go across the panel here. Tara, we'll start with you.
I guess it would be to obviously leverage technology so you get an in-home kind of as immersive experience with all the things that are coming out. I guess it would also be to sort of be really adaptive and quick with things. And even going back to the sort of China question over there, it would be maybe to create ready-made content as well. Like when you're thinking about things in bites, could you kind of take your gameplays and turn them into ready-made GIFs or memes or the kind of language that people are already using so they can embed them in their social media faster? So that the easier you make it and the more convenient you make it to interact with that content, the more they're going to interact with it and spread it.
Okay. Cheryl?
I would say to, go cover all aspects. I mean, it's kind of spreading yourself thin, but it's also to make sure you don't leave anyone out, so it's from TV to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and there are more and more coming up. But, and also, don't just take the same picture or the same content and spread it across all channels. Like, different platforms have different ways of consuming content. Mm-hmm. So just, take the effort to craft something differently for, say, Instagram versus Facebook and things like that. So that would be my advice.
Isaac?
For me as a user, where I get updates on all the sports, just like I mentioned on Ironman, on the last year itself, I was actually following up on Twitter and the Paris Marathon itself. So actually, like I said, if you're a content creator on Twitter, updates is very, very important. I know when I shoot out a link out to all my followers, they will just be started clicking on the live streams or not. They'll be asking me like, where's the live streams link that you posted on the other day, stuff and like that. So if you're gonna post something on Twitter, make sure it's like a very update content and not a broken link or so. Yep.
Azlan?
I think for everyone here, I think basically just get your fans involved. That's one. Get your fans involved. Number two, tell a story. I think a lot of sports fans like to listen to a story, and I think get them involved with whatever that you are planning to do. Because sports fans in Singapore, they unless they are really involved, then they won't really know the brand. So, for example, like cycling, the brand specialized. Like for example, cycling brands. I didn't really know that they are around until I know that local brands are bringing them in, and you need to get some publicity to these people who are carrying the brand forward. Because unless you help them to publicize a bit, like there are local people using your product or at least taking part or competing in your product, then no one will know that your brand actually is out there. I didn't know I wasn't a cycling fan but then I realized that there are locals who are actually pursuing the sport using these international brands, which are very, very big in the US and Europe, but no one has a clue about them in Singapore, except for that small community. So it's good that get these people to bring out the brand and carry it across, because these are people who have more friendships built between them.
Yep.
So, for example, a cyclist can cross over with an Ironman, can cross over with a person from, say, F1, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's the key. The connections made between these people on the ground are the one that matters the most.
Yep. That's true, because like yesterday, I just signed up by Compressed Sports. Just recently, yesterday, I posted up a picture about all the compression wear that they have, and people are asking me like, "Hey, let us know what you think about this shorts. How about the compression cuff and stuff like that?" So as of yesterday, like the questions like booming already. So we're engaging the people. So I think if a brand really wants to engage, maybe they want to look at the real people instead these days.
Yeah. I wonder though, are they confident enough to actually engage you? That's the thing. Have you seen a lot of that confidence among brands to actually make that outreach and do it in the right way?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. I think if they see that the brands, that the blogs that I'm running, if my reviews are good and stuff like that, yeah, why not?
All right. Well, there you go. Some good advice to everyone out there. Just some other information, if you'd like. Patrick Kaur from YouGov has presented, or at least his team has come up with a study on millennials for Singapore and China. If you'd like, I'd suggest connecting with them as well. I'm sure they can share that across. We didn't get into all the details on that, but there's some really interesting insights there that you might want to get your hands on. Again, that's YouGov. In the meantime, I'd just like to thank everyone for your time, and can we give them all a big round of applause too as well? And talk to them. They're here. They'll be here for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.